Porch. I'm Lindsay Baccardo, keynote speaker and virtual presenter for organizations who want to build strong, heart-centered, multi-generational teams. I believe, based on my research and experience, that the modern day leader has a moral obligation to grow personally and lead others from a grounded and healthy and healed place. So you're going to hear me bring on all different types of experts, from emotional intelligence researchers to storytellers to people just like Cara, who are researching and paying attention to the employee experience every day. And this is where I bring all my favorite thought leaders. I bring them to the porch so we can have a person-to-person, human-to-human conversation with our favorite drinks. Cara, I'm so glad you're here. Let me share a little bit. I know if you were here and you were hearing our little chit chat before, you know that I've got mad respect for Cara, and she's been doing this longer than me, and everybody knows her around here. So quick, if you haven't met Cara yet, here she is. She's a workforce thought leader, and she's published and quoted in USA Today, Forbes, Huffington Post, dozens of other business publications. She's an author. She's the author of Staying Power: Why Your Employees Leave, and how to keep them longer, why they leave and how to keep them longer, which I know you're on here to figure that out. So I said, let's bring Cara on and talk about it. Cara, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super excited to answer any questions that you all have.
Yes.
And have a real and informal, right, with my coffee mug here, informal chat about what's going on out there. So you guys tell me what's going on out there.
Exactly. We're here with our mugs to find out from you what's going on in your world. What's stressing you out about retention, engagement with employees. Please feel free to jump in the chat. Sam, our teammate, has started the conversation, so feel free to jump in and start asking your questions. We'll be sure to answer them throughout. I'll be sure to ask Cara the questions throughout. But Cara, I've got a question for you, because the other day we were on LinkedIn. Per usual, if you're not following Cara on LinkedIn, this is a great chance to go and multitask and do that. But one thing that you said, I'm going to read this post because I thought it was fascinating. You said this: friendly reminder to employers. Unless you've provided at least a 5.4% raise to your staff this year, you are now essentially paying them less for making it through the toughest years of their career. Keeping people today requires a new perspective. I'm so curious, what got you to write that specific post? Do you remember what was going through your head? Were you doing research on pay and stuff?
Yes. Okay. So let me back up like 70, 80 years ago.
Please.
People used to get decent raises. All right. And so if you ask anybody over 50 or 60, they will tell you that at their first jobs, they got, an 8% raise, a 6% raise, and they weren't necessarily the rock star employees. That was just what they got back then. And so what happened, if you look at history, every time there's a recession in our economy, the average raises or pay increases drop, and they've never recovered. Never in 70 plus years. So what that means is now most organizations that I work with, and we're talking industry agnostic, we're talking coast to coast, it does not matter who they are. Most industries think it's okay, and the CFOs approve a 2 to 3% pay increase for everybody. And that's not okay, because that doesn't even keep up with inflation. In normal years, maybe. So that could be a cost of living adjustment. But this year, they just came out last week with year over year inflation numbers and what's happening with cost of living. And come on now, what is getting more expensive, Lindsay? Gas, food,
everything.
Rent, right? The top 3 basic survival things that people need are skyrocketing right now in many cases. And so when I saw that 5.4 number for year over year from September 2020 to September 2021, that was the year over year increase of cost of living. And so that's why I posted that. I said, look, employers who are complaining about all your people leaving, if you didn't give everybody a 5.4% increase this year, which honestly isn't even a raise, that's just the cost of living adjustment that's required for 2021. If you didn't give at least that, your people are making less for being loyal and sticking around. And I'm just trying to wake them up, right? Of
Yes.
employers, I'm constantly out there fighting the fight of you've got to listen to your people. You've got to put yourself in their shoes. You have to understand this new workforce if you want to be a place where people want to come back tomorrow. That's it.
That's so brilliant though, Cara, to just put the numbers out there and make it clear, like, this is not emotional. This is not even about like being humane. This is about, if you go right back to the point of retention, so you don't lose more money, you've got to keep up with inflation. I think that's so interesting that I find this too, that I have to go all the way back to those points to help employers understand this isn't my opinion, and this isn't this isn't a Gen Z wants to make more money because they want avocado toast. It's not that. It really is. It's so much to live. I was looking at this one percentage shift that said in the 60s, CEOs made about 20 to 1 what the average employee made, and now it's 351 to 1. I don't even want to, I can't.
Yeah.
And so you have this divide happening too.
It's so painful.
So mad. She's so mad.
It makes me so angry. Yes.
This
so you see that divide too, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
that's my new stuff that I'm going into now. Is a lot of it is about the widening disconnect between the front line and the management.
Yes.
That's it. Is I talked about generations and that divide and whatnot, but now it's almost more of a socioeconomic divide and a lifestyle divide. Like most CEOs do not send their kids to the same schools that their staff go to. Most CEOs do not shop at that same cheap grocery store or that kind of thing. They live in a different world than the front line, and yet they're the ones making most of the decisions. So absolutely just trying to get them to realize that there's a widening gap and widening divide. That's a lot of different things, especially if you're talking hourly workers versus salaried executives, because the flexibility alone and the access that executives on salary have to like even getting a housekeeper or having someone mow their grass for them or, those kinds of things. Or if their kid's school is shut down, oh, well, my neighbor's a stay-at-home mom and she'll watch my kid, just all of that stuff. It's like a whole different world than what their staff is dealing with when there's a snow day or an e-learning day, which is a nightmare for working parents.
Yeah, working parents, especially working moms, and you know this from the statistics, have been doing the impossible. I don't want to call them superhuman because they're suffering. It's not like they're like, I really wanted this to carry all of this. And I'm sure you've seen that as well, as women have had to leave the workforce en masse because there's still the expectation that when the rubber meets the road, moms come home off of out of work.
Okay, so I'm going to get real with you.
Hit me
right here, right now. I'm going to tell y'all something. And I know this is out on the internet and somebody may someday send it to my husband, but he doesn't listen to podcasts or anything like that. He doesn't do social. I'm hoping that don't send this to my husband. All right. But here's the deal. So I was one of the very few lucky working moms whose husband stepped up and said, I'll take care of it, honey. Like I will take care, because he's in the food business and his food job kind of, really went on the down low for a while. So he e-learned our kid from March to September. All right. Wow. And he knew I'm a business owner. So he said, babe, you got to keep your business afloat. I have staff. I needed to keep them employed and, work on projects and things like that. So he said, babe, I got this. I'll do that. Well, let me tell you, and I bring this up because I think a lot of moms are also experiencing this. So he goes back to school, right? Kiddo goes back to school and all that. Well, then just a few weeks ago, and it was really tough getting through that year. And I certainly helped out, but he did the bulk of it. Yeah. And then a few weeks ago, our kid, get this, our kid's teacher, her son was a close contact. So he had to stay home, which means the teacher had to stay home, which means our classroom got shut down because we have no teacher because there aren't enough subs. Okay. So we get sent home for 7 school days while he's in quarantine, and we have to switch over to e-learning. At the end of the very first day, now we had been back in school for quite a while. At the end of the very first day, I find my husband on the floor crying.
Oh.
And it was PTSD. He said it was like all the flood of everything he did last year came back, and he's like, I can't do this again. They cannot shut down on us. I cannot take him to any more parks. I cannot keep him occupied while I'm trying to work. I cannot, and I mean, it was one day off, but it was a flood of all the emotions and everything that he went through last year that came back in 6 hours.
I can imagine.
And I felt so terrible because it took him back to that high stress situation, even just one day. Like, we can handle one day, 1 week. Like, we were going to tag team. My mom helps. Thank goodness.
Totally.
We had this, but it was an eye-opening experience for me, because now every time the school does an unexpected e-learning day, I think there's going to be a ton of moms and dads that have that PTSD reaction of just overload and I can't do this anymore and all of that stuff, right?
Yes.
So my point is, like, as employers and colleagues, even to our friends, like, we need to be there for people 100% emotionally, financially, everything, spiritually.
Yes.
We've got to support all the moms and dads out there, and others too. I'm not saying they're the only ones who've suffered through this and whatnot, but it ain't over. And there's just little things like that can set off people because of what we've been through, the trauma that we've truly been through. And it is still real, and it is there, and it is not over. So anyway, I hope that's a share, but I was just really shocked at how that one day impacted him. It was crazy.
I can imagine that in the moment last year, he was just doing it. He was just written down.
Yes.
And get it done because nobody had a choice.
Right. Yeah.
And then you get freed from it, and that comes up again. I can imagine. I bet there's people who are on this Zoom with us right now who have had that experience, who all of a sudden their kids are back home again. And it would naturally send your nervous system right back to the last time this happened, with all those emotional tags, all those experiences.
Yeah.
Yep. I can see it. I can see it now. So we have all these layers, and that is such a visceral story. And I hope that the HR leaders who are on this call, the teammates who are on this call, remember that, because this is happening. People come home from work or they log off for the day. These are the stressors. I have not met one person, Cara, who hasn't had a major stressor in the last year. I'm talking, usually we look at statistics around mental health and wellness, and about 20% of the adult population in the US at any time is dealing with a mental health problem where they really need more support than just themselves and their family.
Yeah.
I would say in the last year, anecdotally, of course, I have not met a single person who hasn't needed intervention, extra support. Agreed. Hasn't had to take time off. What have you seen as you've been on the front lines helping organizations?
Oh, yeah. So for me personally, I do have family and very close friends that have struggled with mental health, different things, depression, anxiety, all of that stuff. And so I've been around that my whole life, and understand that 20% that has always had it and needed support and whatnot. But I'll tell you, I never had what I call sustained anxiety until COVID. And then now sometimes I'm just like, I have to tell myself to put my shoulders down because I can just feel like all the tension. And then it's like, what am I doing? Okay, just breathe, Cara. And I'm a very, I'm very lucky that I'm a very happy person, and I'm always find the joy in things. And I'm a pretty calm, not calm, like I'm high energy, but as far as stress, I can always like cope through a difficult time and things like that. And I'll tell you that the coping mechanisms that worked for me in the past don't work anymore. And they weren't working for some of that sustained anxiety that I was feeling. And I love CBD oil now. I'm a big fan. And so I use that when needed and other things, that's my dog's collar. I don't know if you can hear him shaking and rustling around here.
You should definitely all have support animals. I've got one sleeping at my feet.
Yeah. He's my intern. But so anyway, I've done other things to help me sleep better. And, just also really relying on friends and family even more than in the past. My dog just grabbed his bag of treats off the counter.
Oh, he knew. He's like, are you talking about something important?
Look
I
at
have dog
this.
treats right here.
He just noticed that his treats were within reach and he was going to go for it. There you go. See?
Here.
So crazy.
She knows. My nose. She heard the package. Here it is. Here you go. You can chew it.
There we go. So, and I do think another thing that came up, this is a little off topic, but another thing that came up right is like this reality of our 24/7 lives. And then we have animals and we have kids. And now you see the cats go across the Zoom screen, so I do love that COVID kind of accelerated some trends of making, professionalism has kind of adapted and adjusted and it accelerated the acceptance of video calls. I was Zooming years before Zoom was cool.
Yeah, you were. And you were a Zoom pioneer.
So I love Zoom. I've had a virtual team for 9 years and we have done everything for almost 9 years virtually and on Zoom and whatnot. So anyway, so I do love that it kind of got us past some of those barriers and other things. But as far as what you were seeing too, I've seen employers really pushing their EAP systems, the employer assistance programs, and educating people on it, because a lot of people don't even know what an EAP is, or if I call that 1-800 number, are they going to tell my boss that I'm depressed, like that I'm having problems with this, and they don't want to know, and they don't realize it's truly anonymous, and it's, even for a lot of EAPs include your immediate family who can get therapy and have counseling sessions and other resources and things like that as well. So, so I'm seeing a lot more employers start to get involved in those conversations. It used to be, like you leave your personal head at the door. Leave that drama outside. You can't do that anymore.
Which is like, there's an element of, sure, we all agree there's a social contract that we're here to produce something. But there was also, and you and I knew this for generations, that it doesn't matter the generation, you cannot separate your emotional well-being from your productivity. These are intertwined. We are not machines you can pull chips out of, put new chips in. You get that.
But the older generations, like more traditional bosses, I will tell you, Lindsay, they think that's crap, that you leave that at home. Like, it's not my problem. I'm your boss. I'm your employer. I never got to bring that crap to work with me when my wife divorced me or husband divorced me or whatever, right? Like, I never got to bring that in. I had to suffer in silence and get to work. And so they think it's like kind of BS that the younger people are pushing back and saying, you know what? I am a whole person.
That's right.
I have staff that will tell me, I am just not having a good day and I'm clocking out now. And because I need to go take a nap, which would not have happened 20 years ago. Like, but I'm like, girl, you take care of yourself. You do what you need to do. If you need some extra PTO, you let me know. If you want to talk, let me know. Right. Like, that's the culture at my company, and we're different. But I just hear so often that people at more traditional companies and cultures, they don't even get that kind of support, and they're looked at as weak and things. So I think too, I remember I've talked to several Gen X experts and Gen X friends and whatnot, and they feel caught in the middle. Like, I want to be my whole self like the millennials, but I know that my boomer friends and bosses won't take me seriously if I talk to them about that. And so they're kind of torn and have to pick and choose and put on the mask. And, I'm glad things are changing, but it's sad that so many things are still that way.
Yes.
And
It's that's so true though. I mean, that's a big element of, when we would talk about generations at work and how to be millennial friendly, we were talking about that maybe 7-8 years ago. I think I know I would touch on this. I'm sure that you did. We would talk about two things often: flexibility and work hours and location, and full mental whole life well-being. And
Yep.
these were very hard for leaders to be okay with. And now you're exactly right. COVID kind of forced our hand, and is really, if you want to keep your employees, you have to acknowledge their humanity. I'm curious, because you are in this world all the time with your team. And we could talk, I could literally talk to you for hours. So I don't know, your puppy probably wants a walk. So here's what I'm curious about. What is one thing that leaders could do to keep employees longer? What's one thing?
Listen. I think everybody's so busy right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different answer if you're asking me what can employers do. Employers need to lighten the workloads, period. They have pushed this whole do more with less for too long, and it's gotten out of control. So employers need to check on the workloads and put more realistic workloads in place. But for the managers, the problem is they have been pushed beyond their limits of productivity. And so now they just don't even have time to check in genuinely with their people of how's it going? And how
Yep.
are you? And how is your dog and your family?
Yep.
That kind of thing. And so I think right now that is needed more than anything. And then you'll uncover what support that person needs and what appreciation or recognition they need for what they're doing, or if they are considering other opportunities, if it's getting too tough for them and things. So yeah, I know that sounds like total 101, but we have forgotten the fundamentals because we're so dang busy. Everyone is just running around like crazy, trying to fill all the vacant holes right now that they can't even communicate effectively like they used to. They know how, they've got the skills in there. They've just run out of the time to do that. So I would just remind everybody to check back in with your people and really listen. Can you kind of read between the lines of how happy somebody is or what they're thinking, and how has COVID impacted them and their family? For sure.
That's so well said. You nailed it. There is this element of, when we pay attention to somebody, we might, and you can see this and you can feel, we've all done it on Zoom where you're like, totally, but you're like kind of answering an email at the same time. It's hard to deeply listen and know where somebody's really at. We call it intuitive listening, right? How would you know where somebody's really at if you can't tune in and ask, is this person happy? They've named 4 things now that are overwhelming them. What am I going to do with that besides say, well, let's reprioritize. Let's set some SMART goals. Maybe it's exactly what you said. Maybe it's less. Maybe it's doing less, not doing more with less, just doing less. I know. If you had to do this, obviously we're kind of our own bosses, but my boss can be a real bee sometimes. And I've had to cut out entire projects and just say enough.
Yeah, I am a workload nerd. Like I am constantly asking my people and checking my list and saying, is that doable? And like moving projects back. So we pick 1 or 2 things each quarter. Brilliant. And that's what we're working on. But then if I do have an unexpected shakeup or a big contract that comes in, or, whatever it is, like a bad thing, good thing, if I have a shakeup, I'll move a project to the next quarter and say, we're not doing that and dealing with this because I'll lose my people. And then I talk to them, hey, do you think we can absorb this? Is this doable? Or do you all want me to push that to next quarter? And then every time they're like, thank you so much for, not making us do it all. Because what does corporate world do? You still have that September 1st deadline. Oh, I'm sorry, you lost a team member and have to not only pick up the slack, but
I just
also
talked to somebody about that.
you have to pick up the slack of that missing person and be involved in the hiring and selection, which is a time consuming process, and the training and
Onboarding
mentoring of that new person.
Yeah.
You already had a full-time job with this September 1st deadline or whatever. And so you still have to do that, but now you're down a man and have to hire and that's what pushes people over the edge.
That's right.
We used to have, I remember back in the day when a lot of companies had like frontline leaders and they called them fluffy, right? The CFO deemed them too fluffy. There's too many assistant managers. There's too many layers. And we tried to do this flatten the hierarchy thing, which was really popular. I think there were books, like big books that talked about it in the 70s and 80s. Like we have to flatten the hierarchy. And part of that was good because we didn't want to be like 18 steps away from the CEO, but now that has come back to haunt us because now there's no levels to grow within and there's no cushion when somebody leaves, to help fill the role. And if you think about if a team has 5 people, everybody has at least 2 weeks of paid time off, plus, anything else that comes up, or if we lose a person, right? You already need 10 plus weeks of coverage a year. Who's doing that? Exactly. And most companies just think, oh, well, they'll just absorb it. But they can't because they're already doing more with less. Yeah.
That's right. Well, isn't that interesting? I was thinking about this the other day, even inside of my own inside of my own company, that when we take vacation, high achievers tend to assume I'm going to sprint to Friday so I can take the next week off. And when I get back, I'm going to be slammed. Is this a vacation? All you did was cram a week's worth of work into the Friday before and the Monday after. And that's not humane.
No, it's not nice. It's not nice.
What do you see? I'm curious what go ahead. Go ahead. What are you going to say?
Well, we just started teaching a new concept that we call job pruning because if you think about why do you prune in gardening? By the way, I do not have a green thumb, but I know about pruning, right?
Theoretically, of course.
Yeah, gardeners tell me that they prune their rose bush at the end of the season so that next year it can come back bigger and brighter and bolder and, more beautiful. And so we took that and started to say to companies like, okay, so what if we prune some of these jobs and pull away some of the dead ends? Because that's what's happening, right? We're not getting everything done anyway. So let's evaluate and pull back on some of this so you can let that person blossom and bloom brighter in the future and actually meet their deadlines and get stuff done rather than constantly looking like they're wilting and falling apart, right?
Yes.
So instead of just continuing to add and add and add, particularly to the really dedicated and the high achievers and the high potentials, you just keep seeing them add things, but not take anything away.
Brilliant.
And so that's the missing piece, I think, in at least the workload conversation.
Brilliant. That's it. We have this, some of us are energized by fear of failure and fear of not getting it all done, which means we always have 120% on our plate. We finish the day. We didn't get 4 things done. We're frustrated with ourselves. We're not relaxed. We come back to work the next day, not restored, already feeling behind. That cycle, a year into COVID, a year and a half into COVID, it's too much. It's just,
it's not sustainable.
It's not. That's exactly right. What do you see companies doing that are innovative in terms of how they deal with staffing shortages? What kind of innovations are leaders coming up with, or companies coming up with? I'm curious.
So a lot more technology, a lot
Robots.
more. Yeah. Well, and software. Here's one fun robot story. So I do a ton of healthcare work. And so one of my, I went to a conference for nursing homes, assisted living, right? Senior care type things. And I met a gentleman who is the director of innovation, which you don't see. That doesn't exist in the senior care world at most companies.
I've never heard of that in the senior care world. I've only heard it at Pixar.
Right, exactly. So he is actually an IT guy from another career, another world, but then he got drawn into senior care, and now he evaluates different technologies, software, hardware, robots, everything. And he has to find the ROI. There's not always a reason to purchase the robotics or purchase the software. He still has to run the numbers and everything. But one of his recent things that he just launched was a salad vending machine. Because for his staff, salads are very time intensive. It takes a lot of time and hands to make every single salad, particularly if people want them custom. Like, I don't do tomatoes. I don't like cucumbers. I don't want cheese, right? So, and a lot of mistakes, like on the customer service side, that I said I didn't want tomatoes, whatever, and all of that. So they sell these salad vending machines, and he has now put those into his properties for more so the assisted living, right? The residents who can order their own food and come get it and things like that. So now, like, the third shift folks stock it up and put in what it had. It was so cool. It was like they're like tubes of all the ingredients. So there's like a tube of romaine and a tube of iceberg, and then a tube of tomatoes and a tube of cheese. And then you put in the screen what you want, exactly the kind of salad you want, and you watch it fill your bowl. And then poof, there's your salad. And so he said that because of that and some other innovations in his dining department, he's been able to cut the dining staff in half by making it more self-serve and things like that. And then now he went from, he didn't say his starting dollars. I'm guessing probably $12 to $14, maybe 15. He's gone up to $19 an hour for his dining staff now, because he needs less of them and could automate more of that process. And he could also shift, right? So you don't want somebody at lunchtime making salads, because that's the most busy time. We have to be delivering and cooking meat and other things, right? So it also shifted the salad prep to that, you can shift it, for example, to third shift that's not as busy, or the prep folks who come in before breakfast, and that kind of thing. So if you also think about the workloads, like when things happen, and you can spread it out that way across staff that isn't busy, right? The dining staff is busy at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but not 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So what can they be doing then, right? Restocking the salad machine for dinner, that type of stuff. So I'm seeing a lot more software usage, even not that it's new, but like scheduling software, if they have a lot of hourly workers, and better applicant tracking systems, and HR metrics, learning management systems. I think people had it on their radar and were like, we should do that. Now it's like, oh, we have to do that because we don't have enough manpower to not be automated. Right.
That's right. That's exactly right. I've got one question that came in about employees. Do you see themes around employee burnout? Is there a theme where you're like, well, this is kind of the pattern by the time somebody leaves? You've mentioned a couple being over, their actual workload is too large. It's not really sustainable. Any other patterns that you see when you think of employee burnout?
I'm not sure I would say it's a pattern, but I'm just seeing people who were dedicated for a long time. So we put employees in two buckets. We have the revolving door, which is the flight risk, and like, I don't owe you anything. I just got here. I don't know you. And if I don't like you, I'm just going to go on to the next job. Right.
Like 90 days.
Classic. Yeah. Everybody knows the revolving door. And then we have the other side, which is the trees. Those are the deep rooted folks. They've been there a long time. They can weather the storm, So one thing I'm seeing is with those folks, they are reaching a point where they're just done. They can't take it anymore. It was like
trees.
Yeah. So like we pushed, whether it was the workloads, it was the stress of the pandemic. You're seeing this with nurses, right?
Absolutely.
So you had this whole, you're our heroes and we love you. And so just hang in there and take care of our loved ones. And they were like, okay, I'm called to serve. And I was built for this moment. Right. But then, okay, I'm kind of done being
How
the
many
hero.
times are we doing this?
Yeah. And then you saw, right, the spikes and things. So I think a lot of times with burnout, I'm not a burnout expert, but I think we do have coping mechanisms that can get us through a hard time. But when we have those either again and again and again, or worse, stacked,
Yes.
one thing and then another. Oh, and now my kids' school is shut down again. Are you kidding me? Right. It's like one thing after another. So again, if we go back to know your people, my staff, I'm so honored that my staff tells me stuff. They tell me what's going on at home. They tell me about the doctor's appointment they just had. They tell me about that. And so I feel like I can support them better when that happens, because I really do know my people and can take something off their plate. Hey, I know you're dealing with all of that stuff. Let's just not worry about that this week. Just focus on these things that have to get done for the client. We'll talk about that next week, that type of thing. So
that's so smart to help. And I just wrote a post about this. It hasn't gone up yet, but how important it is right now for leaders to help prioritize. We can't have 20 priorities. We've got to you said it best, keep trimming that rose bush back.
Yeah.
Because when people feel like they're pushed to their edges, we behave differently. When you push a human to their stress edges every single day, past their stress threshold, it's not good. It doesn't help us. So I love that you said that. I think that's really important. I'm curious, on the other side, what do you think is important to employees in the workforce right now? What matters most to them in the workforce market, would you say?
Yeah. So I think the work-life balance is big.
Yes.
And real quick, while you were talking, something came up.
Yeah.
So I've been using this phrase for years, and I've been mentoring others with this phrase. If your boss or company says, we need you to take this on, right? Something new. If your plate is full, right? Which I'll tell you that's subjective, because some bosses are like, their plate's not really full. They just feel like it's full. They don't know what busy is, whatever. If you feel like your plate is too full or going to be, then the magic phrase is, great, I am happy to take that on. What else is coming off my plate to make room for that?
That's right.
Do I need to delegate this to somebody? Do I, is there going to be something that's just going on the back burner? How do you want that to look?
Yes, that's brilliant.
Right? So you have to push back. You have to push back and say, oh, I'm happy to do that. But then like Lindsay just said, so help me prioritize here. What's going on the back burner if you want me to take care of that?
Yes.
And I think for too long, no disrespect, but for too long, employees just kept taking it and taking it and taking it, thinking, well, my boss told me and I can't push back. And that's what's gotten us to where we are, because people just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And now the workforce is going, I'm done.
That's right. That's right. So, this idea of self-advocacy, that you have to be able to speak to what your needs are and what your limits are. We have to educate the people around us. I think the other thing that I noticed with COVID was, when somebody was working from home, what if you didn't know that that their kids came home, and you didn't know that their dog had to go to the vet, but you couldn't go in because of COVID, and you didn't know all that was swirling, and you're sitting in your house thinking, where is Susie? Come on, Susie, let's go. So this idea of Susie's got to speak up and say, hey, I'm really not going to be here till 10. I've got to set my kids' Zoom up. I've got kids at home. I've got sick pets. I'll see you at 10. Being able to, what you said, I think you used the word push back, but just be able to educate people on what's going on in your world, because we're not seeing you every day. We can't see all the layers that you're dealing with.
Right. Well, and back to your question about what do workers really want right now.
Yes.
So for years, I focus on employee retention, and for years I avoided the compensation conversation, because a lot of times managers that I'm training don't have the compensation power to change that.
Sure.
And even the CEOs, I wasn't getting through to them that they needed to change it, right? I mean, it was like brick wall, whatever. And so what's interesting, I used to just focus on create a better place to work and invest in your manager development, like all of those kind of things. And now, coming out of the pandemic, we now have a workforce shortage crisis. I mean, we threw around that word back in the day. it did not mean what it meant like it means today. I mean, we have
Yeah.
millions of people short. We are millions of nurses short. We are millions
Yes.
of truck drivers short. We are millions of people short in so many industries and whatnot. And so now we have this crisis, which has given employees, right? They had some power, but now they have all the power. I mean, 100% of it, because you can go anywhere else now. And so now I'm finally having to have the compensation conversation. And I think now it is absolutely right now. I don't know 5 years from now where it's going to land, but right now it is money and culture.
Yes.
If you do not have both, if you do not have both, I am out of here. So you better figure it out. Your business model might have to change. The one that I'm talking specifically to executives about, and it might sting a little bit, my friends, but I am telling you, the healthy profit margins that you had for the last 10, 20, 30 years, they are going to be impacted by the rising cost of labor at every single level. So I'm having very real conversations with business owners and executives about the future projections on their profitability. Because if they want to be sustainable, now, if you just want to suck as much as you can out of the next 3 years and then close up shop, whatever. But if you want to be a sustainable business and have employees 3 years from now, you have to be doing both, paying more and investing in the culture side.
You nailed it. It's so smart that you're also preparing everyone's expectation the next 3 to 5 years, because we'll have to measure success differently. We can't always measure it by profit margins. It's going to be, something's going to give. So I think that's so wise. That makes perfect sense to me. Okay. I know we've only got a few minutes. We've only got a couple minutes left with you. Flew by.
I know, right?
If you have a question, and if you want to ask anonymously, I know some of you might not want to be the one to ask. You can, Sam has a way to do that. Sam has a way to take anonymous questions. I don't know how, but Sam, can you tell us how people can do that in the chat? How people can ask anonymously? That'd be great. Oh, you can just direct message to her and she won't say your name. So if you do have a question for Cara, this is your moment. I'm curious, because I know how passionate you are about this, and I know you've been doing it for so long. What do you think, if you were to look back over the story of your life, no one's successful like a straight line up. There's all these experiences that lead us to this moment. When you look back, particularly maybe on your childhood, being a teen, being a kiddo, what's a story that sticks out to you that ties you back, that tethers you to your work today? Can you think of a story that has shaped you for the type of work you do today with employees and retention and creating these cultures?
Oh man, I don't know that it ties me exactly to what I do today, but one story that really shaped me was, and I think it makes me successful at what I do today, is when I was a teenager, I was in theater. And I, like, big shocker, I know.
You're so flat. And I love it.
Yes. Okay. So I was a theater kid. Well, I was trying to get, the lead roles in these shows and whatnot. And one year I didn't get the lead role that I thought I was going to get, right? Everyone was like, oh, this is built for you and I'm going to get it. Right. And I didn't get it. And then of course I was devastated, because back then, theater's your life and all of this. So I didn't get it. Well, then I asked the director after, days of crying and whatever else and stuff. And I asked the director, why didn't I get it? What's the deal? Like, I'm that voice part. I had even like the hair color and the body type and like everything for this role and stuff. And she said, you're hard to work with.
Shoot, Cara, shoot.
I am telling you, Lindsay, I mean, I knew I was kind of a bossy kid and, I was loud and I was, I guess, my way or the highway, I mean, I didn't think I was that way. I thought I was like charismatic and the leader of the pack of my group of friends and things, but I didn't realize that the teachers didn't want to work with me.
Oh my gosh.
They were like, you are hard to work with.
That would
And
shape someone.
I vowed that day. Now I'm still a very strong and sometimes stubborn and sometimes bossy, right? Like, I mean, some of that, it's how I'm wired and all of that, but to become so self-aware at 17 years old of that perception of others and that I lost an opportunity, right? That was the thing.
Yes.
I didn't learn that before the cast list went up. I learned it after the cast list went up. And I vowed that day that I would never lose another opportunity because I was hard to work with. And I have since worked so hard on being self-aware and listening to others, building my emotional intelligence, right? Reading the room and understanding others and being kind to everyone and all of that. And so, yeah, I mean, that just truly shaped who I am today. And I hope I'll never know, right? But I really hope that I never did lose another opportunity that I didn't know about because someone said, yeah, she's hard to work with.
It is so powerful.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense that moment reoriented you in time and space.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a destiny moment. And now you do this type of work. And I'm sure too, some of that is you have empathy for people that want to make a difference, that want to be big and be boisterous. And okay, yes, keep what I see you do so well, Cara, is that you keep your strength, you keep your clarity of thought, you keep your animation and your emotional expression, and you're helping people. It's like you took the best parts of all these pieces and we're here together in this moment.
Mm-hmm. I'm just beyond thrilled to be doing what I'm doing of making a difference, solving a business problem, a costly business
real problem. Yes.
Right. Which then brings in money, right? So I could easily be a starving artist because I was a theater kid, right? I could easily have gone that route. And instead, I feel like also as a speaker and trainer, which is a big part of our business, as a speaker and trainer, I found the jackpot. Like I hit the jackpot on this career because it is the perfect blend of performance and business, and I can make money doing it, right? That people pay me to solve this costly problem of turnover. And I'll tell you, I did not wake up one day years ago and say, I'm going to be a retention expert. I listened to the market. I listened and said, okay, what is going on and what's the gap and what are people complaining about and what is costing companies money? And then I started putting the pieces together and been doing this 9 years. And it was about 5 years ago that we actually started focusing on retention and we saw it coming, not the pandemic, but just the employee market and all of that. We saw that coming. And so some people are like, oh, you're so lucky that you're in the right place at the right time. It's like, we predicted a lot of where this was going because we were listening to the employees and to the companies and started building that out. So yeah, it's amazing.
That's a superpower.
Same for you, Lindsay. I mean, you are so good at figuring out what is missing for the companies, right? Yeah. So it's like you can coach young professionals or professionals, whatever, right? You can coach people all you want, but it's even better to coach the companies and the managers to understand people and to give them the tools of understanding that whole person that you talk about and, all of that stuff. And that's where I think too, we make a bigger difference. I say like, I can either train 50 of your employees to be better employees that they want, or I can train 50 managers to better manage hundreds of employees.
That's right.
You'll get a much better impact from that. So yeah, I mean, I'm just living the dream.
I love it.
Cheers.
You are. Cheers. Cheers to you. Thank you so much for your time. I know that everyone on here is going to want to stay connected to you. Sam, can you put Cara's links in the chat? And we'll make sure to keep the conversation going. I've got one clarifying question before I release you to the walk. Somebody for the dog walk. Somebody asked earlier, Hey, you know that inflation rate? I think somebody's like, I'm bringing this to my boss. 5.4 is the national percentage of how much pay needed to rise to stay with inflation. Do you think that's different based on the region? If you're in New York City or LA, does that change? Would you look at a regional number if you were going to bring it to your team or to your leader executive team? How would you calculate?
If you're going to take that conversation back to your leadership team, I would look at your state and your metro area, assuming that you're near a large city, right? So rural, I find the biggest difference is actually rural versus metro. And what has happened, right? Because like in rural America, the cost of rent hasn't risen as much as metro areas because metro is growing. More people are leaving the country to go to the big city. And so the big city is running out of cheap apartments, right?
Gotcha.
That kind of thing. So I would look at, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I would look at your state numbers and then particularly your particular city. Because I'm sure that as a national average, maybe New York, LA, places like that have risen, but they've also, California and New York have seen a lot of people leave those states because of the pandemic and moving to cheaper cost of living. So last I saw, I think it was Phoenix or somewhere near Phoenix had the highest rent increase in the whole country. They said the top 100 metro areas all saw a big increase in rent prices, but I think it was Phoenix and places like Nashville, Austin, right? The cities that are growing, they're going up 10, 20% in rent because of, it depends on if you're in a place where people are moving in or moving out.
That's right. That makes a lot of sense. I'm sure that's helpful because, we have people from all over the nation who are trying to figure out how to be a better leader, take on this perspective. You shared so many nuggets today. I cannot wait to look back over. We take notes as a team when you come on. And so I can't wait to look back over that and share with more people. And the thing that I think you do so well is you really do make these changes tangible. We're not just talking about big ideas. We're saying this is how you can practically make a difference. So if you're trying to put these pieces together around retention, there are so many ways to get a hold of Cara. You can go to her LinkedIn, you can go to magnetculture.com and learn more there. There's plenty of ways to get connected. Thank you so much for hanging out on the porch with me and sharing everything that's going on. I appreciate it. It means the world to me. You totally made my week. I've been looking forward to this all of October. So thank you for taking the time.
Awesome. Thanks for the invitation, Lindsay.
Absolutely. We will talk soon. We'll see you again on the porch next month. Thanks, everybody.